I am back with Emma Fullenwider, and she is, of course, the life historian. Did I get that right?
Yes, life
Life
historian.
historian, which is so cool. It's a made up word that I absolutely love. It's so descriptive. And we're talking, this is a bonus session only for those folks who are VIP. So I'm really happy that, and like Emma is just so amazing and prolific with all kinds of fun stuff. We're going to talk today about how nerds write memoirs. And so I'm really curious about this. How do nerds write memoirs? So, Emma, just refresh us about who you are and what you do. And then let's get into how do nerds write memoirs?
Okay, let me get off my pedestal real quick. I am a biographer. By day, I am a caretaker for my family. By night, I'm a biographer. And so I call myself a biographer because what I do is very undefined, but mostly just I develop resources, whether they're classes or downloadable worksheets, anything to help people save either their stories or their elders' stories.
Yeah. I love that. And your website has just a wealth of information. And we're going to talk about like digging into some like memoir writing curriculum, like researchers and researching and things like that. And let's talk a little bit about, how do nerds write memoirs? Why would researchers even develop a memoir writing curriculum? Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Okay. So memoir writing, we think of as this very artistic endeavor. But the nerds have come in and added quite a bit of wealth to this project. I am certified in a curriculum called Guided Autobiography. It was developed at University of Southern California by gerontologists, and they were working under the assumption that late in life, when people start having flashbacks and they start telling stories from their childhood, it was always perceived as a sign that that person was losing their mind. It was a sign that their mind is in decline, and so they wanted to study it and see why the brain does that. And what they found, as happens sometimes, was that the opposite is true. It is not a sign of mental decline at all. Um, it is a very cool type of mental development almost that we do very late in life. And so they looked at it, and they know this because only healthy people with healthy brains do this naturally,
Wow.
where they start having flashbacks and talking about things. And my husband's grandpa is 97 years old. And the last 5 years, my in-laws who take care of him have been like, he tells this story every day, And so it is something that people do later. But mostly as they studied it, they found that people do this also when they are in a life transition of some kind, to a lesser extent, but still. What's happening is that when your environment changes or your role in life changes, your brain has to decide, it has to reevaluate what your identity is.
Mm.
And so this is part of that process. And once they learned that, the next step is to say, well, can we synthesize this process? Can we study how people approach this and break it down into steps and use it as a form of therapy? If we take someone who has depression, who's been through a trauma of some kind, and walk them through these steps, what will happen? Will it be healing for them? And what they found was just outstanding. It was so healing and therapeutic and beneficial to people. They had a heightened sense of peace, of life purpose. There were even there was one article I read talking about how it decreased people's sense of physical pain.
Yes.
There was a researcher saying, all of the resources, all of the grants and the research were going into to develop long-term pain relief drugs for people with stage 4 cancer. They said, we need to start teaching people with stage 4 cancer guided autobiography because it was so healing and it was so beneficial to them. And
Wow.
so the emotional benefits were just outstanding. What they discovered was really cool. So they wrote about it in their academic journals, and everyone in academia found out about it. And that was almost it. And it was a small group of them. The man who headed that team up, he passed away 5 years ago. I think he was 97 years old also, Jim Buren.
Oh, wow.
And so it's some of the people who worked with him who have carried on, and they have started teaching instructors outside of academia how to teach this, so that we can all benefit from that research.
So is this a scientific approach, or this is just helping other people, helping us, regular people, do this guided autobiography process?
It's very nerdy. It's so very nerdy. I am more of a creative, artistic person, but I love this process because, if you take a memoir class, if you're confident in your writing, a memoir class is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of fun. If you're not confident in your writing, if you don't know how to approach it, guided autobiography is so much more scientific. You're going to learn about how your brain works. You're going to learn about what triggers memories. You're going to learn about where your perception of self comes from. So there's a lot of really cool research behind it that you get to sort of engage with and see how it works. And it's sort of the difference between being told to dance and being taught to dance. If you're already a dancer, you just need a time and a place, and you go and you dance.
Right.
If you have two left feet, like my husband and I, we don't go out dancing. We don't know how to dance. It's not fun for us because we look like idiots.
Right. Right.
So you need more than just writing prompts. If you are unfamiliar with writing, if it's not something that you practice, you need hand-holding, you need instruction, you need assignments, you need people who are expecting you to show up with work done. And that's what guided autobiography provides. It's not just permission, it's actual instruction.
Ooh, that's really, really cool. A cool difference, because that means that opens it up to everybody, or anybody can do it. You don't have to be necessarily an author or really great at writing, or, a published person. Anybody can do it. And so, like, how freeing is that? That's really cool. Plus, you get the added benefit of all the science behind it. I love, if I know the science behind some things, I love it, and even more, and I'm more willing to participate and do it, and it's way more fun.
Yes,
so that is cool. So we talked a little bit about this, but can you dig into what that process is, how it's different than a regular memoir writing class, but just the process of what you do as you go through guided autobiography?
So guided autobiography offers a lot of instruction. You are told what topic you're going to cover. You're told how much writing you need to have done. You have a class, a small class, because a lot of what comes out can be very private, can be very vulnerable. So it's a nice, safe place to talk about your story. Hearing other people's stories also triggers memories. It's something called memory priming, more nerd stuff. So you have an instructor who's moderating, so you don't have one person taking up the whole, class with their stories. Right. And I just remembered. So it's, you have other exercises. In regular memoir writing, there can be exercises that are silly and, make you feel kind of silly and are kind of scary. But these ones, you're actually told why you're doing this. It's not just to look silly. It's not just to be creative and flowery and, eccentric. Because a lot of people say, well, I would write my story, but I'm not a writer. We associate writers with people who are a little bit crazy, like Ernest Hemingway.
Right. Creatives that, go off into the woods and
unstable, maybe, eccentric people. And so it makes it more accessible for people who don't see themselves in that way.
Well, tell me then about, why is it, like, I just want to go back to this. Why is it important for us to do this and get this out and share these stories?
we talked about this a little bit in the other session, but I will go into it a little more. So
Yeah.
we're at an interesting point in history where the stories that used to be passed on verbally around the dinner table, um, the institutions that provided a place and a time for sharing your stories, for memorizing them, for hearing them over and over again, are in decline. Those institutions are in decline. So people move farther from their families. They move more often. A lot fewer people attend a service organization or a church or a club, regularly. And we just sort of have these single serve lifestyles, which is great if that's what you need, but also it means that we are not the oral tradition that we used to rely on for getting these stories on, has a very important purpose, and it's not surviving the changes that we've made as a society very well.
Yeah.
And so we need new ways to get these stories passed on. There's also just amazing benefits to the person who writes it. Like I said, just the emotional health benefits are great. You have a sense of peace, a sense of just forgiveness. When you're going through a life transition of some kind, guided autobiography can help you get to the other side, and you know what your new identity is, and you have less baggage from the previous phase of your life and more confidence in who you are. And it's becoming the person that you want to be in the next part of your life. So it's not really about publishing. There are a lot of people who want to publish their books. There are much faster, more guaranteed ways to become a best-selling memoirist than going through guided autobiography.
Right.
And I've taken lots of memoir classes. One of my mentors is a best-selling ghostwriter. And when you take her classes, it's all about, okay, this is about your reader. What parts of your story benefit your reader? What's marketable right now? What are people buying right now? And so it's reaching for those parts of your story that are going to sell, that are going to compete with other books that are on the market. And that's just an entirely different process. Obviously, you can publish what comes out in guided autobiography. And I mean, you can publish anything. A lot of people do. Some of the best memoirs that I've ever read were things that people said, this wasn't going to be a book. I just was writing it for myself to process what had happened to me. And I just felt like I needed to get it all out on paper so that I could move on with my life.
Right.
And sometimes those get published, and they have to be heavily edited and changed, for the reader. But when you're writing for publication, do you have another speaker who's talking about writing for publication? Is that part of
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not specifically writing for publication, but if you want to publish, the publishing process.
Yeah.
But you're right. You have to write a very specific way if you want to get published.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Exactly.
Guided autobiography is about self-reflection.
Yeah.
It's that first draft that you write that's just for you, that's just for your own benefits. It's extremely rewarding to create. And actually, as a writer, I found that I was at a disadvantage when I took guided autobiography. So you have to take the class, obviously, in order in order to teach
to be an instructor. Yeah.
And so I would arrive at class and I would have my, homework. And it was something that, because I am a writer, I work for a magazine, I'm a journalist. I would approach it and I would say, okay, what are people going to love reading? And that's what I would write. And I was getting lots of, pats on the back. That's beautiful. But it wasn't accomplishing the purpose. And that's when I had to change and say, okay, this is not about what people are going to want to read. This is about my personal journey. And I had to do the real scary thing of going, I don't know what's going to come out when I start writing about this.
Yeah.
But I need to start writing about it and see what comes, and really digging down into your soul. So it's very rewarding to create a beautiful piece of writing, but it's so orders of magnitude more rewarding to write your way down into your soul and see what's there.
Love that.
It's you are not the same person after going on that journey. And so guided autobiography isn't about what you produce. It's about who you become in this process, in writing the stories, in retrieving them.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I know in memoir writing, you often do free writes and things like that. Just, just start writing. Is it a little bit of that as well? Or is that like this is for nerds, so this is different. So tell me a little bit about that.
You're talking about the free writing?
Yes.
So, so I have a group on Facebook. Facebook has their rooms. I do go in when I'm doing my free writing at night. I go in, I create a room just so that if anyone needs accountability, they know that I'm there, that I'm writing. That's a great practice for professional writers because we operate on a word count. So, you have your word count goal. It doesn't matter if it's horrible. You're just trying to
Just get it out done.
I tell
Yeah.
people when you start writing anything, when you start anything creative, it's going to be messy. It's going to be bad. It's just going to be horrible. And you have to write through the bad stuff until you get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of helping people understand that and not be intimidated by it. Free writing is something that I do at the end of my workshops always, because it's easy to say, okay, I've learned how to do this and now I will do it someday. And if someone takes my workshop and they say someday I'm going to do this and doesn't do it, I have not done my job of helping them save their story.
Right.
So I used free writing to help people really get their feet wet. It's not pushing you into the deep end. It's just getting your feet wet so that you've begun. Because once you've begun, I can encourage you to continue. If you get stuck, I can help you and get people to the end.
Yeah.
So,
and you get hooked. You're like, oh man, I want to do this again and again and again. And that's how you move forward. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you took the class, were you writing your own memoir? Was this how you accomplished that?
I decided to take guided autobiography because I wanted to help people save their stories. It was a hobby of mine. And my mother actually encouraged me to go into it. I was looking for a writing specialty and she said, you just want to help people write their stories. Why don't you do that? And I thought, that's not a job. People don't get to do that. That's too cool. That is too cool of a thing.
Yeah.
And so I started looking into it. And at the time, there was a professional association called the Association of Personal Historians. And this is what they did. They help people say their stories. And so I went to their conference and there was a seminar on guided autobiography. And I just fell in love with it because this enabled me to, if you take my class right now and I'm teaching what I know, you're going to get less than 10 years of what a journalist and homemaker knows about memoir writing.
Yeah.
But if I teach a curriculum that was developed over 20 years by people way smarter than I will ever be.
Yeah.
You're going to get all of that. And so I was able to teach a higher quality class to people right off the bat. And it's not in online business. And I have this problem so much in trying to get help with getting my stuff out there. Everyone's trying to be a big deal. Everyone's trying to be, I'm the expert and I know so much and I'm a guru. And that is not my role. My role is, although I set out to become an expert, spend 15 or 20 years becoming an expert, that's still my goal. But I don't have to wait 20 years because honestly, there are a lot of people who don't have time for me to spend 20 years becoming an expert. I need to teach them now. I originally got into this thinking, well, when my kids graduate from high school, then I'll do this. But then I sat back and I realized we have so few members of the great generation left who got through World War II, who got through times harder than what we're going through. We need to know how they did that. We need to preserve their stories. And that's a generation that we talked about literacy in the last talk. The literacy when they were in school and when they were growing up is not the same as it is now. They have a harder time writing. They are used to the oral tradition. They are used to passing on their stories by being together with people. Right. And we're losing that because of the structure of our society is separated. Yeah. And so I felt this immediate urge, like we need this right now. I don't have time to become an expert. We need it now. Yeah. So that's why I decided to teach it. And it's so much fun. Like I said, it's super nerdy. So it's for those of us who love that, it's great fun, and it's much more approachable to people.
And I like it because you said, when you do guided autobiography, you're hand holding all the way through, which is just amazing. I love Love that. Now, you talked about it being for more introspection. What is like when they're done with this, a guided autobiography, what do you have in your hands? What do you have?
What you have is, some people have all they're going to write. And some people have just the beginning. So the class that I took, there were people in there who had taken it 4 times. And if you write about a piece of your life, you've just written down, if you write 2 pages about some aspect of your life, which is the homework every week, is to write 2 pages about some aspect of your life, you've written more of your life story than 99% of other people.
Wow.
You're already ahead.
True. Yeah. I can see that.
There was a survey recently, 90% of people say they have a book inside of them waiting to get out. So few of them are going to write a book. So if you get just those couple pages out, like the legacy letter, if all you do is a legacy letter, you've written more than 99% of people are going to write, and your family generations from now will thank you for that.
Wow.
If you repeat that over and over and over again, the benefits just multiply to you, to the kids that are going to, your kids, their kids, their kids. So if you keep doing that, eventually you will have a biography. Eventually you will have, something on Amazon if you want to publish it. But that's not the goal. The goal really is that sense of peace, that finding your identity, and getting that out. So if all you do is the first week's homework, kudos to you. But we're going to try and get you to keep going.
Absolutely. It's kind of a gift you give yourself, isn't it? It's something that you give yourself. That is amazing.
Yes, I really advocate for it for personal development reasons. I try to get people to see it as a self-care practice and not as an end goal. Right. And there are other reasons besides the oral tradition surviving why we need this right now. And this is, we're looking at a point in our country specifically where we are dividing further and further into factions. So not just families splitting, but we're also starting to come apart at the seams along racial lines, gender lines, political lines, especially. I live in California. There is a whole big chunk of California just north of me that calls itself the state of Jefferson.
Oh, wow.
They do not want to be associated with LA. They don't want to be associated with San Francisco. And every time I ask someone who lives up there, what difference does it make if you call yourself a different state than California? And they say, because I'm not like the people in LA, because I'm not like the people in San Francisco, and they just don't want to be associated with each other. And that is dangerous. That's a problem. Yeah. We are dividing, we have the National Rifle Owners Association. We have the National African American Gun Owners Association. Why are they not one? I had neighbors who were Indian. I had no idea. They have their own Miss America pageant for people of Indian descent. And I'm not talking about Native American. I mean, people from India.
Right.
They have their own national spelling bee. And I thought, this is really interesting. We're starting to separate from the inside, almost like an apartheid, but from a grassroots level. And if we don't figure out how to belong to each other again, then we are gonna have some serious gaps. And guided autobiography, aside from the personal benefits to you, the benefits to your kids and their kids and their kids, there is a third aspect of healing, and it's a healing across cultural divides. And God knows we need that right now. I'm going to start getting emotional. It is something that we've got to learn how to do. And so when you've got, and stories are the only way to do that. Yeah. So if you've got someone preaching facts on one side that validate their opinion, you've got the other side has their own set of facts, and you can cherry pick facts. You can say, what are your sources? And that screaming match is never going to end. But if someone says, this is what happened to me, the other side is quiet. They can't argue with it. And then they say, I'm sorry that happened to you. This is what happened to me. and the other side says, I am sorry that happened to you. And both sides can suddenly they understand each other, and they feel like they belong to each other, and they realize we need to work together to fix this because there's a problem.
And we talked in our earlier talk as well that when you hear somebody else's story, you can have empathy. You can put yourself in their shoes a lot easier than if you just, look across the road and just observe and think, why are they doing that? Right. Yeah. So when you know and hear somebody else's story, you can have empathy. You can, understand them, and vice versa. They can understand you. And wouldn't you want other people to know why you do the things you do, or understand your culture or your point of view? And so, yeah, that is fabulous.
We've gotten into the habit of taking on labels, lots of labels,
and placing them on other people.
Yeah. What storytelling does is scrapes away the labels and helps us to connect on that most basic universal thing that we have in common, which is that we are human beings. Yeah. And you have to get back there before you can move forward and unite the other parts of your identity.
Yeah. Oh, that is so good. And so guided autobiography is a great way for nerds and all kinds of people actually to write their life stories. Any last words of wisdom for us?
Oh gosh, I have no words of wisdom. I got into guided autobiography because it's other people who have the words of wisdom. I'm just sharing them. But yeah, I would just let people know, don't be intimidated by writing. Writing is just talking in ink. It's telling the stories that you love to tell. It's just making a paper copy of those stories. We identify a lot of things with being a writer, and a lot of people think, well, oh my gosh, if I write this, what would people say? And they'll think that I am getting self-important. And you have to just, it's just you. It's okay. Everyone has permission to write. If you go through a curriculum like this, you have permission plus instruction to write. Everybody's story deserves to be saved.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you, Emma, for bringing this extra content for us. And we are going to get started writing.